Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to day number 5 of 100 Days of Nautobot. We're going to be going over Nautobot Shell and specifically working with Django ORM, which is Django's Object-Relational Mapping. Instead of writing raw SQL queries, the ORM lets us work with the database using plain Python objects. So if you want to grab a site, circuit, an IP address, you can do it all in Python without touching SQL. This is huge for Nautobot Jobs because it makes database interactions simpler, more intuitive, and secure. It's built right into Django, so we get all the benefits out of the box. So now let's move past the theory and kind of jump into a quick hands-on example of how you can start doing stuff and querying information and really the high level of some tips and tricks on kind of what I do on most of my day-to-day responsibilities. So kind of let's get to it. All right. So like I said, my lab has very little information. It's just straight two devices with just one device type, one rack, and location, which is, I think, inherited over three: North America, Texas, and DFW. So in the actual ORM, we have to go into our Nautobot instance and we have to call in an invoke command. Invoke commands are all under the task.py in the actual application that you're working on. So in my case, it's called Nautobot tutorial, task.py, and you will be able to see all the different commands that you can do here. Some are for build related stuff for Docker, some are start, stop, and debug commands for Docker, some are actions, nbshell, which we're going to be using, shell plus, CLI to go into the actual CLI of the Docker container, make migrations, migrate, post-migrate. There's a lot of commands, and we'll kind of go over those in later videos. But the one that we're going to be going over today is going to be nbshell, and I love this one more than all the other ones because it's an interactive nbshell session. So with that being said, let me go ahead and invoke that nbshell. What it does is that it creates an interactive environment for you, and it imports everything that you can possibly need to kind of get started, um, kind of querying and working with your actual environment. So any custom code, models, besides the built-in core functionality will be imported so you can quickly start kind of going all of these things. One of the things that I love to do here is do from the rich library, from rich import inspect. And I love to use this one really when I have to look at something and I don't really know what it could be. So for like this secret, I can just inspect it and it will give me a nice pretty output of, what it is, things that are within it, properties, if it's a Boolean, if it's a string, you get a lot of information right off the box. So you can kind of go deeper into it. So I can go to, secret, and I can do, what does it have? Okay, it's got objects, it's got notes. So if I do objects and I get more information out of it. If I do objects, I can do tags, and the list kind of goes on and on. I can do, let's see, for device equals device dot objects dot first. Actually, that might not work. Did inspect device, and we get all the information for that particular device object, and you can go deeper into finding information. You can see the status ID, etc., etc. So it's a very cool way to kind of get that information going. So that being said, Django ORM, you could pretty much use it to query any of those imports that had anything model related, like I did here for the device. I can query the first device. I can query all of the devices, right? I can go devices.device.objects.all, and you can get a config context of all the devices, right? So I can obviously loop through them, right? So for device and devices and kind of go through each of them. For device and devices, device dot, I'll just put status dot name. I have to print it, sorry. Name equals device dot name. status equals device dot status, print name status. And there you go, right? That's the name, that's the name, that's the active status, active status. So you can query all the information that you want. You can also create objects and create information within the ORM as well. So let's say for particular role that you have, I don't have a role for some reason for this switch. So I can say role equals role dot objects dot, and I can use something to like filter and try to get a query set, or I can do get as well, and I can do let me get switch, right? So this one, obviously, I'm going to get an error because it does not exist, right? So when you do on a Nautobot job, what you would probably do is use some type of logic that does this, and you would probably do a try to get, and if you get this does not exist, then create it. Or what you can try to do as well is, and what I usually always do is I do role objects dot get or create, and I can put name equals switch, and let me see what it does. So for role itself in this object, if we go and explore it in the UI, the only requirement for it is name. And I can even go to inspect role, and we would be able to see more information about it, right? Created, last updated, name, color, description, weight. So particular here, I can go into role, and I can go to new, and you can see the only thing here that's needed is a color and name, and I believe the color is always defaulted to this gray, hence why it didn't give me an error. And if I go to role, I can see that it returns the actual object, as well as if it was created, you'll get a true. If it wasn't, you'll get a false. So if I rerun this query, switch, role will now say false because I did not create it. I was able to retrieve it. If I do inspect role, I will see that it's got, it's an immutable sequence. I have to do role created equals role dot. I'm just gonna technically I could copy all that, but I'll do it like this. This is kind of how I do it with typical jobs. I do a role created, and if I created, I'll do something like if created, and then I do a custom logic. If I need to know that I created, most of the time I say like if created, and then I put print created new role for this, and then switch would probably be a variable, but in this case I'll just put switch. Oh, I put double brackets. There we go. So I'd probably do something like that, but in this case, just role. Inspect, role, and there we go. We get all the information for this role, so we can do more information. So the Django ORM, very powerful tool. It's very good to get familiar with it because if you're writing Django, if you're writing Nautobot jobs, you are going to be writing things with Django ORM, and it's very good for you to get familiar with a lot of these things, especially when it comes with like tables or IP addresses. If I do dir IP address, some of these functions that are in the IP address object are very good to save you time. I'm trying to find the one that it is. So you can get primary IPv4, IPv6. All right, so I restarted the shell just for the sake of finding the model that I needed, just to show you something real fun to do within, the nbshell. So first I'll do import from rich inspect, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect the prefix. So prefix, you'll probably work with it if you're doing anything network automation. So you can see kind of what builds up the prefix object or the class, sorry, and kind of get more ideas about it. But if you do something like prefix dot get first available IP, you can see what this particular thing does, right? It returns the first available IP within the prefix or none if it doesn't find it. The way that you can find information on what some model can do is if you obviously do directory and then do the model itself, you can get all the methods within it to see, okay, what can this thing do? And I found this one up here in get available IPs. And this is where I was able to find that information, as well as down here, get first available IP, first available prefix. And you can kind of get all that information from the getco. So if I do something like prefix equals prefix dot objects dot first, because I only have one, which is a 10.10. This is the prefix that I only have in my environment. I can do something like available IP equals prefix dot get first. Get first available IP, and now this will return the very first IP available, dot one. Realistically, let's say you just created this prefix and you just need the very first IP because you're going to assign it to the gateway. You can easily have done this and then assign this IP to an object, a router object, right, or a router device. If you do not want this particular thing to provide this one, then you would have already saved this in a different step and done it. But this is something that you can quickly do. I don't have to do the math. If there's already 30 devices within this particular prefix and you do not care, you can just do this one and it will get you the very first one that's available if it's something that you're requiring to do in your automation. Um, Something else that's pretty interesting to see within here is if I go into save and I go into inspect equals prefix dot validated save, you are going to be using both of these a lot. And I urge people to use the validated save more often than not. And the difference for it is in Nautobot and in Django, generally save is a standard method that writes the model's instance to the database. It assumes that you already know what you're saving and you know that it's valid. But Nautobot adds the validated save, which runs model validation before saving. That means that it checks things like required fields are filled, choices are valid, unique constraints aren't broken, and it also does any custom model clean logic passes that you create. So save just writes to the database and there's no safety checks, and it will only bomb if there's some integrity error within the database, which are hard to debug. But if you run the validate save, you run full validation first, then you save. So I urge everybody to always use this one. And yes, it's a little slower depending on what you're saving because sometimes if you're looping through a lot of things, it could take time. Like I've worked with some Nautobot jobs where I'm saving thousands and thousands of objects at once. So I have to do like a batch type of savings. But it's a matter of clean data, right? The time that it takes, let's say you would have saved, you know, for the sometimes some of the jobs that I run are literally in the hundred thousands of objects that I save because it's like a monthly process that I run. It might take 3 hours to run. And if I were to not do the validated save and just save it directly to the database or just write some sort of SQL that just saves it using actual raw SQL, and bypass everything, then obviously it's going to be super fast. But then I run into the problem where the data might not be correct, the data might not be wrong. And when you're talking about production, and sometimes you can be dealing with like very sensitive information, you do not want to kind of run that risk. And the 3 hours that it takes to run at night is very well worth it. So these two are good to know. but this one's the one that you should always use if you're going to be changing something within a model and or an object and then saving it. Always run validated save so that you make sure that you are actually performing model validation for it. Sorry for that time skip. I was trying to find out the name of convention for it. It's actually update or create. And it's similar to get or create, and I'll just write it here. Get or create. So where one looks up giving keyword arguments, updates one with defaults if it exists. Otherwise, it creates one. Similar thing with get or create, except this one creates a brand new object. This one creates an object or just retrieves it. This one updates it with the information you're providing or creates it with it. So this one's cool if you're, pretend you're getting new statuses or new metadata like location or type, and you are now, updating something. So if I do device.first, and this is device 0, and I do inspect device, I have, status active. I have the rack as 1. I don't have pretty much anything else. It's empty. Power ports, all power ports are there, 0. But let's say I want to update some information, but I don't know quite yet if I have this device or not, right? Like it might exist, it might not. But let's say I want to also update the serial. So if I do device equals device.objects update or create, right? Because I don't know if it's there. And I'm trying to find the one that's called device01. And I want to pass in status equals default. I want to pass in status name equals active. Defaults equals, I'm going to pass in serial number equals 001. Oh, where did I put? Oh, right here. So if I do something like this, and I go to device, obviously I did not create it, so it's false. So if I go to inspect device, forgot to do this with the dot. 1 second. Device updated device, and I will go ahead and do inspect device and serial number. There it is, 01. And the rack stayed the same, role stayed the same, active stayed the same because I gave it to it. But if I go and rerun this one more time, but now I move the status over in the default. Status equals status dot objects dot get name equals offline. Status. There we go. Now you can see that the status is offline. So you can do a lot of cool things within the ORM. It's a very cool place to just kind of start your development. Come in here, start playing around with it, and just get familiar with everything that has to do with Django ORM because you are going to be using those for the Nautobot jobs. So that is it for this quick video on the ORM. It's really, there's a lot of information there, but you kind of have to work with what you know and do, because for me, if I go exit and I go into nbshell, there's still some models here that I've never touched. And I've been working with Nautobot for a minute. And it's just a matter of you know, my enterprise just does not use those specific models, or I just have used it once and I really have never, circled back with it. But the ones that you're almost exclusively going to use is something like cable pass, circuit termination, devices, device family, device type. So most of these you'll get to know, familiar with, but some I've never even kind of used before, just because my job kind of doesn't require me to. So that's it for this video. The next video is going to be day 6, object as variable. And let me see what this is talking about. What is this talking about? Jobs. Oh, all the variables here. We kind of went over this already, and I'll just kind of go through it and just kind of give a demo of all the variables, and there'll be a quick video. So that's it for this one. Thanks so much.